Tonight, the president blasts back.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing.
A sharp focus on faltering memory. The special counsel report investigating President Biden's handling of classified documents, exposing limited precision and recall. Plus, a new phase in Israel's ground invasion of Gaza. And perilous crossing.
The Darien represents the most difficult hurdle in these migrants' trek to the United States.
The dangerous migrant route between the jungles of Colombia and Panama. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A special counsel investigation and report, the president addressing the nation in primetime, and tonight the political fallout continues. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. President Biden will not face charges for possession of classified documents. Still, the special counsel report includes an ongoing political headache for Biden, his age, and faltering memory. The report reveals Biden had trouble remembering key events. In response, he and his administration are fighting back. CBN's Brody reports.
In a hastily called press conference Thursday night, Biden strongly disputed those descriptions.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president, and I put this country back on its feet.
The president also refuted any allegations of willfully retaining classified documents collected dating to his vice presidency. A federal crime, but one that would require a mental state of willingness. Biden pushed back against that as well.
Here's what he wrote. There is, in fact, a shortage of evidence that I willfully retained classified materials related to Afghanistan. On page 12, the special counsel also wrote, for another documents, the decision to decline criminal charges was straightforward.
While choosing not to bring charges against the president, special counsel Robert Hur, who was appointed by former President Trump to serve as a U.S. district attorney in Maryland in 2017, cited a shortage of evidence, but also considered that it could be difficult to get a jury to convict him because he would present himself as a, quote, sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. The report said that in Biden's interview with the special counsel, he could not remember key milestones like when he started and ended his time as vice president, or when his son, Beau, died. Another charge Biden strongly denied, but then he forgot a key point about a rosary Beau gave him.
Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented, I wear since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of...
Former President Trump blasted the decision not to prosecute Biden while he faces criminal charges himself on handling classified documents, saying Biden's case was 100 times more severe than his and that there's a two-tiered system of justice. Conservatives said the report showed what polls have also shown the public is also concerned about, that the president isn't mentally up to the job. And Republican lawmakers also spoke out, with House Speaker Mike Johnson and Steve Scalise, Elise Stefanik, and Tom Emmer issuing a joint statement, saying if the president is too incapable of being held accountable, he is certainly unfit for the Oval Office. Brody, CBN News.
Thank you, Brody. Well, the fallout over President Biden's memory is raising questions about mental acuity in the nation's highest office. CBN News Washington correspondent Hillary Powell is following the facts we know so far. Hillary?
Well, reaction from both the White House and President Biden is firm. They are rejecting that he is too old to hold the highest office. But with all of this political chatter back and forth about what the report means, medical doctors are using this as a chance to really get frank about what happens as we all age.
Person in this country be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
President Biden is attempting to reassure Americans he's mentally fit, fighting back against the special counsel's report over his handling of classified documents. White House officials are also doubling down on their confidence in his capability to lead.
The gratuitous comments that respected experts are saying is out of line are inappropriate, and they shouldn't distract from the fact that the case is closed.
One of the world's leading brain experts, neurologist Dr. David Perlmutter, tells CBN News he's not surprised the report describes the president's recollection as, quote, painfully slow and his memory as hazy.
It's expected that President Biden or anyone of his age may well continue to decline in their cognitive function. It's pretty much a universal observation for anyone.
President Biden is 81. Robert Hur's report states Biden would likely present himself to a jury as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. President Biden's latest physical was released nearly a year ago on February 16th and shows he received specialty consultation with a neurologist as part of the examination, where Dr. Perlmutter says the best insight on competency comes from.
Wondering about the documents that he had at his house, make specific comments about his cognitive function, I think is inappropriate. I mean, these are the types of judgments and descriptions that should be made by a medical professional.
Now, Dr. Perlman says regular cognitive function tests should really be normalized for people who are over 70 as a preventative measure so things can take place like changing your lifestyle, getting blood pressure down and blood sugar down and keep them under control. And we'll also be keeping an eye out for when the president's next physical examination is scheduled. Jenna.
All right, Hillary, thank you. CBN News chief political analyst David Brody is with us now to discuss. David, politically, this is a huge blow to President Biden. The White House calling it today gratuitous, suggesting the special counsel didn't need to release all of these details. But was it, David? An NBC poll shows 77% of voters have concerns about Biden's age.
Yeah, it's a big disconnect. You know, you've got the Biden administration saying there's no problem here. As a matter of fact, you had Joe Biden saying he's mentally fine last night in that press conference. And then you have that poll that shows that voters don't believe it. So there's a major disconnect. And it's kind of like, so Biden is saying I'm fine, and the rest of America is saying don't gaslight us. We see what we see. And so the minute you start to disconnect from the electorate like this, when you live in a false universe or false reality, you're toast. You're done. And I think that's kind of where this is moving towards regarding Biden. I think at this point, it may just be a question of not just if he loses the election, but if he even gets to be finally the nominee here at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about that, David. What does this mean for 2024? Do you think he stays on the ticket, or could we see, Gavin Newsom or Michelle Obama or some of these other names that have been floated around?
Jenna, I got to tell you, I have been very reluctant to think that he is not going to be the nominee. In other words, I thought he'd be the nominee for a while. Now, I'm not so sure. As a matter of fact, I would say that the percentages are that he will not be the nominee, because this story is just going to get worse. Last night, the whole day, was the worst day of Joe Biden's presidency. There's no doubt about it. And it's just going to get worse from here. Remember, Jenna, it started as a whisper campaign about his mental health, and it went to David Axelrod and some prominent Democrats. And now you've got the DOJ. The Biden DOJ, even though it was a special counsel, but still saying all of what they said about his mental health. This is just really bad. Yeah. So I think we're going to a potential brokered convention. I think what you may see is the 25th Amendment kind of being trotted out there behind closed doors to Biden and say, look, do you want we're going to either invoke the 25th Amendment or you've got to drop out, potentially even resign. There's a difference between, of course, resigning as president and dropping out as the nominee. I see it more as a dropping out as the nominee, and that gets into a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, we'll see. So we're talking about Biden's age and mental acuity, of course, but ultimately, David, the special counsel did decide not to charge him. That's not the case for former President Trump, who faces charges in his own classified documents case down in Florida. David, a lot of conservatives are wondering, how is Biden's case different from Trump's?
Well, and they've got a lot to be concerned about. Jenna, Trump talks a lot about the two-tiered weaponization, two-tier justice system. Well, look at this situation. Donald Trump had classified documents, willfully took classified documents, and the DOJ wants him to go to jail. The Biden, on the other hand, willfully had classified documents, and the recommendation from the DOJ is that he, in essence, go to memory care. I mean, look, think about the difference, Jenna. I mean, it's startling if you think about it. The cases from a willfully having classified document situation are very much the same. This idea that, Trump was negotiating and holding on to the documents. Well, either way, the point is he was willfully doing it. And according to the DOJ report against Biden, he was also willfully doing it. So, look, this is apples to apples. And look how the DOJ treats Trump versus Biden. That's called game, set, match Trump.
All right, David, we have to leave it there, but it's always good to see you. Thank you so much, David. Have a great weekend.
You too.
Overseas tonight, Israel is preparing for a major new phase in the war against Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asking the military to draw up plans to evacuate the busy border town of Rafah. It's been spared by Israeli offensives so far, but now there are 5 times as many Palestinians there because they've fled from other parts of Gaza. Netanyahu is ordering IDF and security forces in Israel to submit a combined plan to evacuate the civilian population of Rafah in order to destroy 4 Hamas battalions there. Also new tonight, NBC News reports Israel is open to allowing Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar to go into exile in exchange for the release of all hostages. Hamas still holds some 100 hostages. Will hit Iran where it hurts. That is the message from counterterrorism experts as the U.S. retaliates against those responsible for the continued attacks against American troops in the Middle East. CBN News national security correspondent Caitlin Burke has been following the U.S. response and joins us now. Caitlin.
Jenna, U.S. strikes have increased on targets in Iraq and Syria, especially following the deaths of 3 soldiers in Jordan. Last week, they struck facilities used by the militia believed responsible for carrying out that fatal attack. This week, a mission eliminated one of the group's top commanders.
Initial assessments indicate that there were no additional militants injured or killed beyond the one Kataib Hezbollah commander who was targeted.
Counterterrorism experts say while the U.S. campaign is significant, the strikes aren't hitting targets that matter to Iran.
The broader point here is the IRGC, Iran's elite terrorist force, is the one that funded, equipped, and supported these attacks. And they haven't been held accountable at all. In the strikes last week, as well as the ones this week, we didn't see any of their terrorists killed. They were given well enough notice to be able to all escape back into Iran.
Former special advisor for Iran, Gabriel Nerona, compares the situation to a game of chess.
They don't care how many of their pawns die. But if you hit their rooks, their bishops, their queens, that's when they really start hurting. And that's when they change their behavior.
Meanwhile, an Iran watchdog group warns the country now has enough weapons-grade uranium to build a nuclear weapon in just a week. While Nerona questions that assessment, he warns that the current situation in the Middle East makes a potentially nuclear Iran more dangerous than ever.
What I've learned from history is that if a country says they want to wipe Israel off the map, if they want to destroy America, we should take them at their word. And so there's a reason the last 6 U.S. presidents have all declared that Iran will never get a nuclear weapon, because the things they would do with it are far worse than any other country that has nuclear weapons would ever dream of doing.
Nerona also worries about recent comments made by President Biden about Israel.
The conduct of the response in Gaza, in the Gaza Strip, has been over the top.
I think it says the message that if you attack an ally of ours and you shame them enough and you use your propaganda machine enough inside America, you can get America to back down from its allies.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken also criticized Israel this week, specifically on the humanitarian toll of the war. In Tel Aviv, Blinken warned the attacks of October 7th shouldn't give Israel, quote, license to dehumanize others. Jenna?
All right, Caitlin, thank you very much. And coming up, new signs of a strong economy as American consumers still grapple with high prices. In economic news tonight, a new high water mark above 5,000 for the S&P 500 today after December's revised inflation reading shows lower levels of inflation than first reported. That's good news, signaling the Federal Reserve's work to put the brakes on inflation with sustained high interest rates may be working. The Consumer Price Index adjustment from a 0.2% increase is down from a 0.3% increase. And weekly jobless claims are down for the first time in 3 weeks. Jobless claims fell to 218,000 last week. That's down 9,000 from the previous week. Mark Hamrick is the Washington Bureau Chief and a senior economic analyst for Bankrate and joins us now. Mark, welcome. So how big of a deal is this milestone for the S&P and what does it mean for the economy?
The stock market has really vastly exceeded expectations with its performance in recent months, and getting the S&P 500 index drives dinner table conversations and the headlines and discussions like this. But more importantly, it lines the coffers of those who are saving for retirement and adds to a so-called wealth effect, meaning that everybody who has some exposure to the market feels better about the situation. But the research has also indicated that consumers broadly feel good, even if they don't get a direct payoff from the stock market when we're setting records like this. Of course, not everything grows straight to the sky. The market's volatility can work in the other direction, as we've seen in recent years, but you celebrate the wins where you can get them.
Yeah. What do you make, Mark, of the tick down in jobless claims last week?
Job market remains remarkably resilient and robust. That's really been the story for a number of months now. Most recently, the unemployment rate at 3.7%. But let's do remember that interest rates remain elevated, and that does take a toll on the economy. But the reality is that estimates for growth in the most recent quarter, the fourth quarter of last year, and for the current quarter, it's still early, really have topped expectations. Those estimates keep rising, meaning the economy is performing better than expected.
And we're supposed to get a new consumer price index report out next Tuesday, Mark. What could we see inflation, or could we rather see inflation get down to the Fed's goal of 2%?
That's the hope. We're all hoping for that, Jenna. I think, if nothing else, the upcoming reading on the consumer price index will come in line with expectations or better. Gasoline prices down in the latest month. Everybody likes to see that. And I think the Fed will be cutting interest rates in the second half of the year.
All right, Mark Hamrick with Bankrate. Great to see you, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend. And when we come back, CBN News heads to one of the most perilous crossings in the world. A first-hand look at the migrant crisis after this. As we turn to the migrant humanitarian crisis last year, in an effort to make it to America, a record 500,000 migrants traveled through the dangerous jungle between Colombia and Panama. CBN's Chuck Holton traveled to Panama, venturing deep into the area known as the Darien Gap to document what it's like.
The massive flow of migration that broke records last year continues to grow. That's panicking politicians in Panama and the United States as both countries are entering an election year. Still, many see this as their best chance to get to the U.S.
I start in Iran and Istanbul, Turkish, and I goes to Cuba, Havana. Havana goes to Venezuela, Colombia, Darien Forest. Darien Forest come here.
I'm about 4 hours upriver inside the Darien Gap, and I'm in an Embera village called Canan Membrillo. This house behind me is typical of the building style that they use here. It's a thatched roof hut up on stilts to keep the bugs away, and this is normally what you see in these villages, but things are changing in Canan Membrillo, and that's because of the migrant flow that's coming through in their thousands every day. And so the people here that used to be engaged in things like subsistence farming or fishing are now moving to logistics and tourism, and because of that, their new houses look like this.
Given that so many migrants passing through the Darien could have stopped in multiple countries to make a living, points to economics as their primary motivation, not persecution.
When did you leave Afghanistan?
It's like nearly.
Maybe a month ago?
No, a month ago.
Less?
Like 15 months ago, 16.
15 months?
Yeah. I was
Did you go to Turkey, or where did you go?
Iran.
Oh, you went to Iran.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, from Iran to Brazil.
Iran to Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil to Colombia. Colombia to Panama.
I don't know. You know better than me.
Yeah. Where do you want to go in the United States?
In the LA.
You want to go to LA?
In Los Angeles.
Okay, and maybe 2 more weeks, or 1 month, maybe
and
1 more.
Maybe more, because I don't have money now.
Oh, okay. How much time did you spend in Europe?
10 years.
This is the Rio Chucunaco behind me, and the other side of that is the Darien Gap. going down toward Colombia. So it basically is the separation point between Central and South America. And up until this point, there has never been a road across here, which means that this is the furthest point south you can drive from North America. But as you can see behind me, that's about to change because they're in the process of building a large bridge that will connect these two sides of the river. And for the time being, they say this road is just going to go to some villages on the other side. But from the size of this bridge, it looks like that may have other plans in the future. And if that's the case, that could change everything from an economic standpoint, a political standpoint, and from the standpoint of migration here in the Western Hemisphere.
This area is rich in fertile soil, predominantly used for farming activities like raising livestock and growing tubers, among other crops. Transportation is solely by boat along the river, often requiring 4 to 5 hours of travel upstream or downstream. However, with this project, they'll have a more accessible link, potentially leading to significant development.
The Darien represents the most difficult hurdle in these migrants' trek to the United States. And while this new bridge may make their crossing much easier, it's likely to create headaches for politicians, especially as greater numbers make their way to America's southern border. Chuck Holton, CBN News, Panama.
Still ahead, taking scripture to the Super Bowl. Finally tonight, peace from the Good Shepherd. That's what San Francisco 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy relies on as he leads his team to the Super Bowl this weekend. In an interview with Sports Spectrum, he shares how scriptures like Psalm 23 impact his daily life.
In that passage, it's talking about, I already have what I need from the Good Shepherd in Jesus. So, I don't know. I've just been studying Psalm 23 throughout the whole season and been going back to it. It's what I start off with actually every single day.
And the 49ers face off against the Kansas City Chiefs this Sunday at 6:30 Eastern in Las Vegas. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here Monday after the Super Bowl. Have a good one.